The accusation made by the National Security Advisor, Bamangana Mongunu, has continued to generate widespread controversy and condemnation all over the country. Now, the NSA in the leaked memo alleged that Muhammadu Buhari, Chief of Staff, that is Abba Kyari, is one of the major impediments of Nigeria's national security interest. Now, consequently, Mongunu fired a warning memo to all service chiefs to desist from taking further directive from Kyari. Now, good morning and welcome to Press Talk on Television Nigerian. I am your host, Samuel Akwan, and with me in the studio to dissect this controversy is Dan Atai. Dan Atai, you're welcome to Press Talk.
Thank you,
and,
Mr. Akwan.
Peggy Shandy. Peggy Shandy, you're welcome.
Thank you very
now,
much.
We'll quickly deal with this issue. Now, let me start with you, Mr. Dan. Days after this leaked memo and the controversy in the country, President Muhammadu Buhari has not weighed in to say anything. What's your take?
Well, we are waiting for the president to react. Apart from the president himself, the chief of staff too, and the National Security Advisor, Mongono and Kyari, they have to give us what we call a national press statement, joint national press statement, because this is a matter of national interest. We are talking about a memo, a leaked memo from the office of the National Security Advisor to Mr. President. And I don't know whether Nigerians knows the weight of this memo coming from this ambiguous office. It's an office that have a status quo of security apparatus and logistics in the country. And I don't think Nigerians, especially patriotic ones, would want to overlook this kind of leaked memo. In the sense that if you go through it, which is one of the things I will bring on my own program subsequently in the nearest future, or perhaps today, that if you look at the memo critically, you will discover that he emphatically accused the chief of staff of, acting like the president, or giving orders or issuing directives without the knowledge of Mr. President to the security chiefs. And he also accused him that his office was never an elected office and he never swore an oath to defend the integrity and the sovereignty of the country. So it is a matter of national security concern, and analysts like me would want to look into that from the empirical formulas and whatever he dropped is a big bomb to me. Is a big bomb, and I don't think that the security chiefs will take this lightly. Mind you, beside the president or aside Mr. President, the next person to issue order to the security chiefs is supposed to be National Security Advisor. Mongono is right on that. And if it is true that Kyari has been issuing order to the security chiefs, then I think it is wrong. You saw the records, the achievement of Mr. President from 2015 to 2018. Then suddenly you saw the renewed attack from Boko Haram and the release of Boko Haram, let me say the rehabilitated suspects that have been adjudged to have carried out training or reintegrated into the society. So if the National Security Advisor is coming out and a memo is being leaked, a memo to the security chiefs not to take order from the chief of staff. Chief of staff is not president, though you have the power, the authority to act by the directive of Mr. President. No chief of staff actually was elected. You understand? It was a political appointment, just like the NSA too.
But after President Buhari inauguration for second term, the president said that the chief of staff, his chief of staff, that's Abba Kyari, will be acting on his behalf.
No.
And then is that not what
is that
not what we're seeing playing out?
That was not what the president said. And if the president said so, If I have not seen any document signed that the Mr. President or on television said so, if he says so, he is going against the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because he can't say that the Chief of Staff should act on his behalf. And again, if at all such statement came out from the presidency, then what we are seeing now could be the reason. That means somebody masterminded that statement.
Exactly, that's what we see.
And if somebody because in the Constitution, in the absence of Mr. President, the Vice President take charge, not the Chief of Staff. And what Nigerians got during that time is that ministers who wants to see him or whatever, I'm talking about the president himself now, that ministers and permanent secretaries who wants to see him should do what? Should see the Chief of Staff. Yeah, Mr. President can give directive to the Chief of Staff and say, look, this person, I have appointment with this person, this minister, in case I'm busy, this is the directive, this is what to do. Yeah, this is the function, these are the functions of Chief of Staff to Mr. President, COS. But to take constitutional authority or audacity to himself, especially as it concerns national security, is unbecoming.
Now, how do you assess a country or a presidency where a chief of staff issues directives to the service chief, and then the president is not aware? How do you assess such a country?
That is why I said it's a total blunder. It's a total breakdown of security architecture. Is a total breakdown of security information, and then some security chief, because of their level of practice in that field, the status quo they've maintained, they may not even want to take order or directive from the Chief of Staff, especially because it's not coming from Mr. President, and that could hamper our security framework in the country. It's dangerous, very, very dangerous, and even very sardonic that this is happening. We have gotten the memo. I have the memo. I have the whole write-up from the NSA. And I feel, what is this? You understand? So something needs to be done immediately. And if it is not done, if a national press statement does not emanate from the presidency, this will continue to be the topical issue until that is done. Nigerians will need to know from Mr. President, from Abba Kyari, his Chief of Staff, and from the NSA, Mongono. We need to know. We have the duty to know. We are patriotic citizens that have defended Mr. President, defended everything that this administration is doing. And if such memo has been leaked and we have seen it, we cannot fold our hands and begin to say that we will continue to play the psychophancy. No, this is not about psychophancy. This is a matter of lives, and properties of the patriotic citizens of this country. And they owe us that obligation to explain explicitly and vividly to our understanding why the Chief of Staff to Mr. President will be issuing directive to the service chiefs.
Now, I'll come back to you. Now, Mr. Peggy, you see the NSA issuing a press statement or a memo which has been leaked. Now, would you say this man, there's the NSA, did issued this memo out of frustration?
Yes, of course, yes. That memo was actually designed to leak.
From which office?
Yes, from whoever became very frustrated that the insecurity problems of this country is becoming too much. And so someone who is patriotic would have actually felt that there's a need for this memo to be leaked. Yeah, because the recent attacks and the killings that has become very, very, rampant now, it's very clear that something is wrong. And, people went to the streets protesting the fact that what kind of a country is this that there is a lot of former president and commander-in-chief is a very is a general, retired, man who really knows the security operations.
Yeah, he knows much
Yes,
about
a lot.
security.
Yeah, and then in his campaign promises, he actually made sure that he assured Nigerians that he was actually going to deal with Boko Haram. And you know, from what you said in the first instance, where you said the president had said in his absence, let the chief of staff act on his behalf. And then a friend here who has also done justice to say that there's no statement like that. I think the only statement that ever came up was when the president made it clear that all correspondence
should pass through
the chief of staff.
Not to act.
And not to act. Therefore, it means that, you know, the role, we need to really understand at this point the roles of who the chief of staff is. It is a close, confident...
Okay, at this point, to take a quick break. When we come back,
Yeah.
you are going to highlight the role of the chief of staff.
All right.
Stay with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back. In case you are just joining us, this is Press Talk on Television Nigeria. And then before we went on that break, Peggy was telling us the role of the Chief of Staff.
Yes, thank you very much. The role of the chief of staff is the closest confidant to the president. He arranges the itinerary of the president, and because he's a very close confidant of the president, everything coming from him, you know, is considered very important. And so he's the last man standing. He sees the president first, and he's the last person who usually must see the president to prepare him for the next day, because he has the itinerary of the president. All right. Now, with that closeness, it is also very possible that on security matters, he may not be able to give orders, but he may also influence the president, you know, in informing him of what will happen. And that is the bottleneck that the NSA has actually got. The NSA, the National Security Advisor to the President, is not a member of the Federal Executive Council, but he is a very important presidential aide.
You have said it all,
Yeah.
Mr. Peggy.
No, let me just, presidential aide, you know, to the president on security, meaning that he plays a key role in the National Security Council, where the president is the head. Yes, and then all the service chiefs are supposed to take instructions from the NSA.
Yeah, from the NSA,
Yes.
not the chief of staff.
Not the chief of staff. So listen to the points I'm making here. And so while we move from NSA, we move to NSC. NSC, meaning that the National Security Advisor plays a very important role at the National Security Council, where the president orders. Now, the chief of staff, being a close confidant with the president, becomes a tussle. The bottleneck that's where the service chiefs, I don't know, but the memo, the content of the memo is very, very clear.
Yeah.
And so it's the question that, is it out of frustration? Is the answers to what I'm asking now. I'm answering now.
Yes.
I'm providing the answer because if two principal officers that are serving the president are having problems with who the service chiefs to listen to, then that itself is a frustration.
Now, beautiful. Now, I'll come back to you. Mr. Dan, now, because of this rancorous problem within the presidency now, Nigerians have said both NSC and Abba Kyari should resign. Is that the solution?
Yeah, apart from resignation, I think from one end, one seems to be very patriotic.
And who is patriotic here?
For even if you say it is a deliberate act for the memo to have leaked, I think it is a patriotic act to do, even if it is out of frustration. We're talking about lives and properties. Then from the definition of their job descriptions at the presidency, it is not even the chief of staff that is the closest confidant of Mr. President. The closest confidant of Mr. President is the chief detail. The chief details is like the handbag. If possible, his duty is even to sleep with Mr. President, even if Mr. President is on bed with his wife. Let me tell you, the chief of staff, from what we have seen in this memo, to be honest and to be patriotic and to set agenda as a journalist, as a youth wing of this nation, of this country, as a patriotic citizen who also is laboring day and night to see that the administration of Mr. President and all the governors are set in a trajectory where we will see governance and security. That what Mr. Kyari is alleged to have done is against our constitution, is against our patriotic, lifestyle in the country, is against the security framework and architecture that is supposed to secure lives and properties. No wonder that we started hearing different, acrimonies among the service chiefs. We started saying that Boko Haram suddenly resurfaced. We started saying, how can you say that even if this is the fight against insurgency, it is not conventional war, that it is ideological war? Our Nigerian armed forces have been trained to deal with even conventional war, idealistic war, and any kind of war. Their training has been very, very expert in nature. And they have the technical know-how and they have proven it. Buratai have shown the sagacity, the capacity, and that he can truly be the chief of army staff.
So are you saying
so,
from the leak memo that
we have
the chief
seen,
of staff is compromising security in the country?
Yes! There have been evidence of, compromises. Evidence of compromises for the National Security Advisor to have erred, to come out, even for the letter to have leaked at all. That is why I said there must be an urgent national press statement from the presidency. Otherwise, we will keep talking it on the media, keep saying it. It will become continuous topical issue.
No, many would say the president has always been writing to Nigerians. Now, this time, based on the nature of this issue, security, which on daily basis lives are lost. Now, should the president just issue a press statement, or the president should talk to Nigerians?
The president will sit with his chief of staff and with his National Security Advisor and tell the world, and especially Nigerians, what transpired. Has the chief of staff, Mr. Abba Kyari, have been giving orders to the security chiefs? Yes or no? Let us hear it. This memo that leaked, the content of the memo, are they factual? Are they? We're talking about realities now. I get me. We are not pretending. This is nationhood for God's sake. You understand? If Mr. President is in charge and has been the one giving the directive to his chief of staff, then we will tell Mr. President this act is unconstitutional. Because the office of the chief of staff is like a correspondent, only a correspondent to Mr. President, and not to give constitutional directive or take the audacity of constitutional framework, because he never sworn oath truly. The NSA should be, in the absence of Mr. President on security matters, the National Security Advisor is next in line. And all service chiefs have to maintain the status quo according to the constitutional framework and lay down to take directive of what next to be done. Because that is why I say this leak is a patriotic act.
Now, Mr. Peggy,
and not out of
Are
frustration.
you in support of the call by Nigerians that both the NSA and the Chief of Staff to the President, Abba Kyari, should resign?
Well,
would that be a solution to the current practice?
I don't know how to attend to that, question.
Why should an NSA resign?
But I want to understand that the content of the memo is very heavy, and that suggests that the Chief of Staff to the President, he is not a military, for God's sake. He doesn't even have a military background. He does not belong to any of the intelligence outfit, and so for the NSA to accuse him for giving out orders to the chief of the army, the service chiefs, to me is first of all very, very ridiculous. And then that, but I see an understanding, a conglomeration of Abba Kyari being a confidant to the president. He hasn't failed in his duties as being a confidant and the chief of staff. The NSA boss too has not also
to the president.
Yes,
to the detriment of Nigerians.
And the idea of beginning to lose lives and property just because one mistake of the chief of staff or lack of synergy amongst the intelligence community is also is totally unacceptable. I really do not. No, for this mistake, it's not to sack them or answering the call of the Nigerians that they should be sacked. I think it's just a misunderstanding of synergy, that the president can actually call them together and tell them and spell their roles, and so let one not overlap the other.
Oh, thank you. Now come back to Mr. Dan.
Yeah.
Look at this. The chief of staff issues directive to the service chief without the knowledge of the president, and the president is in the country. And now, out of what people describe as frustration, the NSA issued a memo. Now, what does this say about the president, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, as to the daily running of the affairs of the country?
To me, I haven't studied the law very well. Just like I'm not a lawyer.
No, what I'm saying,
but
what I'm saying is,
I think that is a felony to me.
What I'm saying is the president really aware of what is going on in the country? If the president is not aware of what is going on, even within the cabinet, between the chief of staff, the NSA, and the service chief, how about what is going on, what Nigerians are passing through on a daily basis? Is the president aware?
Let me give a little preamble over these tussles and issues that are happening at the presidential villa, the Aso Rock. First of all, when Mr. President was taken abroad for his health challenge, we saw how the First Lady, Aisha Buhari, cried foul, people trying to kill her husband.
On the alleged cabal.
At the alleged cabal, and she even threatened that the jackals and the lions, the leopard, they should wait that the guy is coming back and that he's alive. is going to deal with them. Then subsequently, after a few months, we saw how she accused Abba Kyari and others of taking charge of the presidential villa, even to the extent of bringing his family there. I'm not against the chief of staff, but I'm against some excesses. You understand? I'm against some excesses because this is a country where the country have to function by the document we refer to as the Constitution. You understand? This is not a joke, for God's sake. You don't work outside the framework of your jurisdiction.
Because
it could cause anarchy. It could even cause felony. To me, it's a treasonable felony for a chief of staff to issue order of matters of security issues to security chiefs to go and do.
And the security
so we are looking at this as a mere stuff. It is not a mere political gimmick.
A mere allegation.
Or a mere allegation. This is not a political gimmick. There is nobody that have not lost one or two persons from insecurity in this country.
Even from the president's state.
Even from the president's state. Imagine in his own state, just last week, that Boko Haram or bandit went to burn about 30 persons alive. You understand? Are you telling me that the army who reclaimed 17 local government from the hands of, under Buratai, from the hands of Boko Haram, are not still in charge? They are in charge. Something is causing acrimony and animosity within the service chiefs. Are you telling me that under the chief of air staff, who have been detonating camps, who has the capacity and wherewithal to know that this is where Boko Harams are camping and use air logistics to destroy their camp? Are you telling me that they don't know what is? But there is this kind of acrimony, disagreement. Where is this order coming from? What needs to be done? Okay, even the issue of reintegrating into the society the repentant Boko Haram. Was that order taken from Mr. President? These are or from the chief of staff. These are national issues we must begin to deliberate and talk, because we cannot sleep with our eyes closed anymore in the country. And this is President Muhammadu Buhari, whom we voted overwhelmingly on three grounds, let me say. On one, to curb insecurity, like he boasted that he becomes, to curb insecurity, to safeguard lives and properties. He said it. And then two, on the fight against corruption, to eliminate corruption to the barest minimum. Then three, to revamp our economy, because we know him to have the techniques and technical know-how to dealing with these three issues.
So you just mentioned this.
And we are beginning to see lapses.
From 5 years on now, have you seen significant improvement in these key three sectors? Genuinely,
yes. I have facts and figures that to justify and exonerate Mr. President that he did better. But after his return from the hospital, you understand, I believe that was like a threat to his life. Or they threatened him, if you mess up. You know, like he said, corruption always fight back. Corruption started fighting him back. And who knows whether the corruption fighting him back has even crippled him to the presidential villa. And we must say these things. I get him now. And if that is the case, then I will request that the chief of staff resign immediately. And not the NSA.
We don't have enough time. Now, in your parting words, what do you think is the solution to this present controversy, which many lives are at stake, because this has to do with security?
You know, even the life of the president was at stake. And when the security apparatus from SS to police to...
So what's the solution?
No. I'm going to say something. Just give me 2 minutes, please. I'm going to say that even the life of the president was at stake. And the life of the president was almost lost when even the security was surrounding the president. Now, I told you earlier that the chief of staff is a confidant to the president. Don't forget the word. That word confidant is very important. When the president returned, he had to sack all the security people that were in the villa to be able to replace them. Could it not be that the reason why the chief of staff may have been very close to the president is also that he trusts him more because of his close, then all these service chiefs, all those people that are crying down that the memo is leaking because there is something on the ground that is not talking the psychographics.
So what's the solution?
The solution is simply let Mr. President sit those involved, sit them down, tell them their roles, and let none overlap another. Every of them has a constitutional role to play. To ask them to sack them because a memo has been leaked, to me is also very wrong. I feel very well that they are all confident in the president is confident working with them, but they should not cross boundaries. That's it.
Mr. Dan,
directives should not be coming from the chief of staff. That is number one. Security directives on any national director, he is just a correspondent to Mr. President. If he is even the confidant, he couldn't be as is confident than the vice president. We have a vice president who is constitutionally mandated to act on behalf of the president and not the chief of staff.
And who Nigerians voted for.
And who Nigerians voted for, which is Vice President Yemi Osibanjo. You understand? We should work like people who have gone to school, people who are also being elected. This is not a banana republic. This is a Federal Republic of Nigeria. And as such, I will not condone or be part to whatever that is not the rule of law and the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. As a matter of fact, no matter how powerful the Abba Kyari, the Chief of Staff, is, by law and by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, is not as powerful as the President himself, the Vice President himself, and the Office of the National Security Advisor. So he should maintain his lane. As a matter of fact, if he has issued any directive to the security chiefs without the consent of Mr. President, is a treasonable felony and he must be in for it.
Even the chief. Thank you very much. That's as much we can take for today on Press Talk. With me in the studio has been Peggy Shandi and Mr. Dan Atai.
Thank you.
This is an ongoing conversation, and we'll keep you updated as the matter unveils. I am Samuel Lapan. Thank you for tuning in.
Why should I?